Week 2, fantasy football trade targets. We are talking about some must-buy wide receivers that are available in your fantasy football leagues and also some guys that you should be shopping, maybe looking to sell high on. Danny, do you want to get us kicked off with the first must-buy wide receiver of the video?
Yeah, the first must-buy wide receiver of the video for me is actually Drake London, wide receiver at the Atlanta Falcons, a receiver that I traded for in the Flock League going into the year. But I think you guys can also be able to trade for him after what happened in week 1. He didn't have the biggest box score, and if you are able to look past the box score and see what exactly did Drake London do on the field that can progress moving forward, all of the usage indicates the fact that he could be in store for a monster season. We are talking about a player this week, week 1, Michael Penix, fourth career start, 15 targets and number 2 in expected PPR points. And the route chart from Next Gen Stats just goes to show that the emphasis of the Falcons passing game was getting London the ball in space and trying to let him work. A lot of quick hitters trying to funnel the offense through him. And there wasn't Darnell Mooney in this game, so that might be a point to people saying, well, what if Darnell Mooney comes back? He's probably going to get usage in his own regard. The other 3 starts that Penix made, Drake London was a 13 target per game player. So to me, I think that's exactly what Drake London is going to be, the hyper target of this offense, the alpha of this offense. And honestly, what this usage reminds me of is 2019 Michael Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, a 36% target share. 34% of the team's air yards, 67% of the end zone targets. Keep in mind that he missed about, a drive or 2 at the end of the game. Definitely a guy that I'd be looking to buy low on, because I think the whole point of these videos is to determine what the player is and what is the price tag on the open market right now. Because if there's a discrepancy, then they're either a buy or a sell. And Drake London is a mid wide receiver 1 with high-end wide receiver 1 upside, as we pointed out in the pre-draft process. He's available probably for high-end wide receiver 2, if not mid wide receiver 2 price tags, for 2 reasons. Number 1, he didn't have a big box score. Like you said, he was just the wide receiver 22 on the week this past week. But number 2, he also is kind of dealing with a shoulder injury. It doesn't seem like the injury is a factor. He is currently back at practice today, as is Darnell Mooney. So I think getting that high-end wide receiver 2 price tag for him is a buying window that is not massive. You're going to have to pay up for Drake London still, but you are getting a 80 cents on the dollar type of discount.
And I think the biggest positive, again, we could talk about the usage. We could talk about use across the formation, clear number 1, like a Puka Nacua level role for this Robinson scheme. But the main thing for me was I thought Michael Penix looked phenomenal. Like against you guys, he was airing it out, ripping darts from the pocket. And if he's going to be that type of quarterback, that Matthew Stafford type of quarterback, kingmaker for his wide receiver 1, I can see this offense really taking off.
Yeah, not to mention for a young quarterback, Todd Bowles is, we'll put him in a blender in terms of the fronts. Like Michael Penix in his 4th career start is probably not used to seeing the type of, down fronts and blitz packages and stuff that Todd Bowles is used to putting out there. So I would say that he definitely performed really well. He was also under pressure and he was able to stand in, deliver darts and that kind of thing. So if you can get Drake London right now, and courtesy of our Flock Fantasy Trade Finder for Keon, Coleman, and Romo Dunze for Ladd McConkey, if you could tier up from Ladd McConkey to Drake London, I think that's definitely something that people are able to do. Given Marvin Harrison or Garrett Wilson's big performances in week 1, you might be able to tier up from those guys. Devontae Adams and DK Metcalf were traded for Drake London, especially in a shallower league. Like that was in a start 7-10 teamer. Hammers is all that matters in those type of league formats. So Drake London, again, if he's a mid wide receiver 1 projection rest of the season and you can get him for high end wide receiver 2 or even mid wide receiver 2 price tags, you gotta send out some offers.
Well, the last question I have for you, assuming the shoulder injury, again, like you said, Deepak, sounds like it's going to be a minor issue, maybe a 1 week, 2 week max issue, which he's going to play through. That's about the reports we're hearing right now. Let me ask you this question. After week 3, what percentage chance do you think he would have to be valued over Justin Jefferson straight up?
I would say he'd have to put up some great numbers. Given how McCarthy looked in the second half of that game, I would put it at probably just like a 10-20% chance, because I think McCarthy looked good enough that Jefferson should be able to produce. But if we see McCarthy being more inconsistent like we saw in that first half, it's possible for sure that Drake London just gets undeniable volume, like you said, kind of to the tune of what Puka Nacua did. And if you think that's an outrageous question, well, Puka Nacua in points per game outscored Justin Jefferson last year.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I wanted to pose it to you guys. If you can get Drake London, like Corey said, high-end wide receiver 2, even low-end wide receiver 1 price tags. I'm not saying you have to get an egregious steal for him, but you're getting a guy that legitimately has top 3 to 5 overall ceiling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So moving into my number 1 buy low right now, and that is Tetairoa Mcmillan, who I classify as a guy that is probably a mid wide receiver 2 rest of season with wide receiver 1 upside, given that he's a rookie and he's still getting better and all that kind of stuff. And I do think, given two factors. Number one, he didn't have a great box score. 5 for 68 doesn't scream at you. And number two, how bad Bryce Young looked, specifically when the Panthers game was on like red zone, for example. Like they saw that bad interception that got called back and all this kind of stuff. I think people are going to view Tetairoa Mcmillan more as like wide receiver 25 rest of season, something like that. The one-handed catch that he had that a lot of people are kind of circulating around Twitter right now didn't count. It was a PI on the play. He was basically held and he still makes the catch. He had a near one-handed touchdown as well that was like 30 plus yards downfield, which also you could have argued was a missed pass interference. And the fact that Bryce Young played super, super poorly, at least at times during that game, it's an opportunity to buy low on Tetairoa Mcmillan. All the film bros right now are raving about how good he looked in that first game. Mike Renner of PFF says Tetairoa Mcmillan was the only redeeming quality to the offense. He looks like a true number one already. And I've seen a lot of people echo it. Josh Norris from Underdog and a couple of other people say this. Tetairoa Mcmillan, 27% target share in his first game. If you're buying him for fringe wide receiver 2-3 price tags, you are getting all of that upside baked in. Week 3, he might be a top 12 receiver in our rest of season rankings.
You're buying him at his floor if you can still get him for like wide receiver 24, 25 price tags. He's my wide receiver, I believe, 16 rest of season. And even that's kind of like baking in more so the 70th, 80th percentile outcome. Because like you said, if Bryce Young does improve, I think another factor, by the way, not having a capable wide receiver across from him definitely hurt Tetairoa Mcmillan in this game. Tetairoa Mcmillan, we saw, across from him, Xavier Legette didn't really look too good. Hunter Renfrow was getting starting slot snaps. Like, I do think that once Jalen Coker comes back, gives you that natural complement to Tetairoa Mcmillan, works from the slot there, we can even see more opportunity for Tetairoa Mcmillan to have big plays.
Yeah, and like you can see some of the trades here. If you can get him for JCM straight up, Jameson Williams straight up, as much as I like Jameson Williams, I definitely would prefer Tetairoa Mcmillan.
100%.
You see these like Keon Coleman and J.K. Dobbins for Tetairoa Mcmillan kind of deals. If you can do those kind of 2-for-1s, two guys coming off of decent games. Tetairoa Mcmillan and Charbonnet for Dylan Sampson and ETN. You could argue that's a lot more of a fair kind of competitive deal, but I do if you're in a league where you needed a wide receiver, full PPR, start 7, like you can see there, definitely a deal that you could definitely get done there. So yeah, Tet McMillan, a guy that I'm absolutely buying into as a potential wide receiver 1 upside type of guy rest of season. Because it all comes down to this. I believe in the quarterback. I know he didn't look great, but I do think that Bryce is going to look better in the future.
And it's funny because I think we can just contribute this whole video to buying these, big-bodied X wide receivers. You guys will see who comes next. Our honorable mention as well, another X wide receiver. Realistically, the X wide receivers in week 1 were, I would say, the biggest underperformers due to expectations.
Yeah, other than my guy, who's like the lightest wide receiver in the league, except for like Xavier Worthy. But yeah, we could pivot right into your guy you're wearing his jersey right now, and Nico Collins, which no one absolutely is shocked by. And a couple people I saw, a couple of hate comments for you, Danny, that they didn't take Derrick Henry in their fantasy football draft and instead took Nico Collins. But again, this is about pricing out what Nico Collins is. Yeah. I was worried about this exact scenario playing out a couple of times this year where the Texans offensive line is overwhelmed. They can't get the football out quickly. And Nico Collins, who's more of a downfield receiver, suffers as a result of that because Christian Kirk wasn't playing in this game. But had Christian Kirk been playing, I think that he probably would have had 7, 8, 9 targets in this one because they were trying to get the ball out to, factor in for that Rams pass rush that was beating the shit out of their offensive line.
Yeah, the offensive line definitely didn't look good in week 1. And there's not a lot of positives that I can say about the Texans offense in week 1. Like the usage for Nico Collins was awful in this game. It looked like Nick Caley was kind of overwhelmed by the Rams in that first game as the OC, which, I mean, I guess you can attribute it to the fact that, the Rams would know Caley more than anybody else. He obviously worked there for the last few years. He comes over as the OC for Houston, and the Rams were just on top of their game. Their defense played phenomenal in that game. So I'll just give them their credit. But really what this comes down to, the fact that Nico Collins was a first-round pick in your league. People will see right off the bat, oh my God, this guy gave me 3 catches for 25 yards. This guy gave me 5.5 PPR points. It's good to just do your due diligence. Like, see in price gauge where that guy's at. Maybe, you have a Garrett Wilson on your team. Maybe, you have a Ricky Pearsall on your team. You have a wide receiver that kind of smashed expectations in week 1. Can you use them to tier up to Nico Collins? Because again, Nico Collins was still my 7th overall player coming into the season. Nico Collins is still one of the 5 to 7 best wide receivers on earth. And I do think we're going to have the week where Nico Collins reminds people who he is. He's going to have that 8-catch, 183-yard, 2-touchdown performance sooner rather than later. And as soon as he does, you might not have another buy window on Nico Collins for the rest of the year. So I know it's kind of low-hanging fruit. Obviously, the first-round player had a bad week. Go and target him on your wire. But this is more so just just appealing to the emotional factor of FF. If somebody took Nico Collins that early and you're throwing 2 players at him that maybe had 25 PPR points and 14 PPR points, like, can you throw up Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt plus Garrett Wilson to go get Nico Collins right now? You might even be able to go cheaper.
Yeah, in sharper leagues, like, I would tell you to pound sand if I had Nico Collins because I'm holding my first round pick. I'm not going to panic after 1 week. But like you said, we're trying to appeal kind of to every league format here. And I'm sure somebody in the comments is going to be like, yeah, I traded Marvin Harrison and J.K. Dobbins for Nico Collins. Like, somebody's going to comment something like that. Like, I know a lot of you guys might be listening to this right now and go, that would never happen in my league. That's fair. Your league market's a little bit sharper than some other people's, but you can see some of the trades going down here. DK Metcalf and Kyron Williams were traded for Joe Burrow and Nico Collins. Ricky Pearsall and Emeka Egbuka. As much as I like those young players, I would rather have Nico Collins. Garrett Wilson straight for Nico Collins. Lad McConkey and Jacoby Myers for Nico Collins. Again, I would say I'm more on the side of if you can get him for 85 cents on the dollar or less, aka you can get him for like low end wide receiver 1 price tags, just in case that's how he performs because of the inconsistencies of the offensive line. That's more so where I'm buying. I would call him more a hold than a buy. But if you can get him for, really cheap, then obviously go ahead, do your due diligence. You never know, man. Like that person, for example, might have been caught between taking Nico Collins and Derrick Henry during their fantasy draft, and they feel like they made the wrong decision and they need to pivot.
Well, I mean, like you said, we literally got a comment about that. And all I would say is, again, yeah, Jamar Chase is a better real life talent, but I also think that's like wide receiver 6 versus wide receiver 1 or 2 in the league. And nobody's overreacting to the fact that Jamar Chase had 2 for 26 in his opening week. Nobody's overreacting to the fact that the Bengals offense put up 17 points against the Browns. Realistically, when you have elite players, people just got to understand that there's variance. Variance is going to happen.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I would say just to combat Nico a little bit is I am a little bit worried that we won't. I mean, probably not this week because CJ Stroud kind of owns the Bucs after his breakout game in his rookie season. I do worry that the sophomore CJ Stroud might be more around this year than the rookie year CJ Stroud. That would be my one combative to the Nico situation. But again, elite talents, trust elite players, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and even if you're getting sophomore CJ Stroud, that was still a 19-point per game score in the games that Collins played 50+% of the snaps. So brighter days are happening. He's not going to score 5.5 PPR points per game this year. Otherwise, I might not be able to show my face on YouTube again.
Yeah, you probably won't be able to. And yeah, the one non-X receiver that we're going to talk about here is Devonta Smith, who, of course, you talked about a darling of yours pre-draft in Nico Collins. I'm going Devonta Smith because similar to Nico Collins, I think the emotional factor is at play here because when you have, let's call Devonta Smith a spike week wide receiver 2, because that's, I think, what his probable floor is based on what he's been the last 3 seasons. He's been a spike week wide receiver 2 the last couple of years. I think he's going to be available for legitimate wide receiver 3, maybe even wide receiver 4 price tags, because the person who drafted Devonta Smith, their worst fear played out. Devonta Smith managers in week 1 watched Jalen Hurts on primetime drop back 23 times for 152 passing yards and 0 touchdowns. And all of the touchdowns in the offense went to both running backs, Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. The Eagles were always going to be run heavy, especially at the beginning of the season, especially when they're leading in games. But things going forward, as I echoed all offseason with Devonta Smith, he's an elite NFL wide receiver. The Eagles are a top-tier offense. You will not go broke taking a profit. Take great players on great teams. That's just reality in fantasy football. We cannot predict what it's going to look like week to week. There are going to be games where the Eagles throw 18 times. There are going to be games where the Eagles throw 36 times. Like it's going to be a variance thing. A.J. Brown right now is hurt. Matt Harmon charted him in week 1, first percentile against man and zone coverage. Did you know this, Danny? First percentile for A.J. Brown against man and zone coverage in the first game. If he misses time with this hamstring injury, that's how Smith crushes. So that's kind of why I'm also buying into Smith right now and not buying into A.J. Brown necessarily. I'm just saying kind of hold on him. Week 1 Thursday night football kickoff is always weird. I don't read a ton into it, but the good news for you as the person prospectively looking to go after Devonta Smith is that the manager who has Devonta Smith probably is reading a lot into it because it confirms what they thought before, which is that the Eagles aren't going to throw and this is going to be a bad passing offense. But I'm not really worried about it. I do think that, yes, Smith is going to be inconsistent, but that's what I want out of my wide receiver 2s and 3s. I want those 30-point performances, even if it comes with the 5-point performances that Smith had in week 1. If you can get him for Jaden Reed, Darnell Mooney, and Jordan Mason, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt straight up, Stephon Diggs type straight up, Ricky Pearsall type straight up, that's what I'm looking to do to go after Devonta Smith right now.
Yeah, and that's kind of the sentiment that I share. In terms of like what you felt about Nico Collins, is kind of how I feel about Devonta Smith, where a lot of my concerns going into the year were validated. Less than a 40% neutral pass rate in the game in week 1. However, people are overreacting. Even baking that in, I still value this guy as, a top 25, 26 wide receiver coming into the year. And he might have fallen to like wide receiver 30, wide receiver 31, wide receiver 32 level price tags as some of these other guys around him. Like, for example, right now, Deebo Samuel, who we'll talk about in a little bit, probably has more straight up trade value than a guy like Devonta Smith, especially in casual leagues. People know, okay, Deebo Samuel was a wide receiver 1 a couple years ago. He had a big time spike week. You might even be able to make that type of flip straight up. So if people really changed their sentiment on Devonta Smith, again, I have him now 26 overall rest of the season. The only change there, a guy like Zay Flowers, I had to move above him. A guy like Rashee Rice ended up moving up as the suspension gets even one less game. And a guy like Cortland Sutton, I just thought looked like a complete target alpha, and Bo Nix is going to have better games. But aside from that, I mean, he's definitely in that tier. He's in the tier for me from wide receiver 20 through 26. And you can make the case that he's going to have bigger spike weeks moving forward. The Eagles, like you said, aren't going to throw the ball, despite them being a relative rush offense. In fact, one of the heaviest rush offense in the league. They're not going to throw the ball 23 times every week. There's going to be games, like you said, 25 attempts, 28 attempts, 32 attempts. And he's just a good enough player to be able to capitalize when they do have those weeks.
Yeah, and I have him at 22 still. I have him right in the same range as, Zay Flowers and Emeka Egbuka and Cortland Sutton, like you said. And I think that's where I view him to be. And like you said, there's probably going to be people out there going, oh, Deebo Samuel had a good week in week 1. Maybe I would prefer him over, Devonta Smith rest of the season. Ricky Pearsall, oh, George Kittle's on IR. People might be thinking, oh, let me go Ricky Pearsall over Devonta Smith. Maybe Jacoby Myers is now a guy that people think about in the same vein as Devonta Smith, like Keon Coleman, Michael Pittman coming off of big weeks, that type of thing. So that's where I'm at with Smitty. I'm not really worried, to be honest. I think that, yes, these games are going to come. That's just part of the Eagles offense. As the season goes along, maybe attrition to the defense, maybe Barkley starts to get banged up. I don't think that this 23 pass attempt volume will keep up every single week. So staying in the same game in the same division here, the shared buy that we have, because we have 5 buys for you and then 3 sells, is George Pickens, who, very similar to Devonta Smith, I view as like a spike week wide receiver 2. Do I view him as a wide receiver 1? No. Do I view him as a wide receiver 3 or 4? No. I think he's a spike week wide receiver 2, given the offense he plays in. And most importantly, too, the usage that he showed us is clues to what we're about to see in better games, because the Eagles were 3rd in the league last year in adjusted fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So this was a very tough matchup. Not to mention, if you think about it rationally, their whole secondary was like year 1 and year 2 players, and they probably all got better.
Well, part of it too, he saw a heavy doses of Quinyon Mitchell in this game. It was funny. I mean, the Cowboys did a brilliant job scheming CeeDee Lamb in this matchup. The Eagles obviously didn't have a big answer because, I mean, if CeeDee Lamb had his hands on for the second half of that game, probably could have ended up with 200 receiving yards. But that just goes to show that the Cowboys know how to scheme their good players open. On top of that, George Pickens ended up having another 37-yard DPI in this game. You do the math there. He catches that. We're talking maybe a different tune to a 4-67 type of game. Obviously, 10.7 PPR points, not, great, but it's a lot more than the 6 PPR points that maybe people see on their screens over on Sleeper. Yeah, I think you made the point clear here. With George Pickens, we saw exactly what we needed to see from this offense. Brian Schottenheimer taking over as the head coach, and we actually saw more creativity with the offense. This is a tweet from Jacob Gibbs. 59% pre-snap motion rate in the opener in 2025. They were only at 47% last year with Mike McCarthy at head coach. This game, 21% play action rate. They were only at 18% last year with Mike McCarthy. On top of that, we've seen in the past what Dak has been able to do with a guy like Michael Gallup. If you were to tell me that you were getting maybe a 20 to 30% more talented version of Michael Gallup in this offense, I could say 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns very comfortably in better game scripts. I would not be shocked if this week against the Giants, given our track record against the Giants in the past, what Dak has historically done against the Giants in the past, overall what the Giants struggle with and do well as a defense, I can see us really picking on those corners.
Yeah, well, and that's why I said his usage kind of points us clues of what they're going to do with him, because he had the only end zone targets in the game among the wide receiver core, and he had 30% of the targets on 3rd and 4th down as well. So even though he only had a 13% target share, it didn't look great. Like you said, Quinyon was kind of on him most of the game. The usage that George Pickens gets is going to be when teams key in on CeeDee Lamb. He's going to be freed up opportunities, especially in the red zone and downfield. And Pickens is going to be volatile as a result. Like, you are going to get 6-point games from George Pickens. You should if you don't want 6-point games out of your wide receiver 2 types, you should have drafted a running back in that area who maybe has like a higher volume floor and doesn't have as many down weeks.
100%, but also to combat that as well, it's like, I love CeeDee Lamb. I think he could be the best overall player in fantasy, but he's not going to have 41% of the team targets every single week. Even in the games where he crushes, it's going to be at 30 to 35%. And even in that game environment where CeeDee Lamb was so dominant as a target player, he still got 13% of the targets. Again, 13% is not great, but if you do the math there, maybe that 7-8% that went to CD in this game goes to Pickens. You're talking a 20% target share on a team that wants to air it out.
Yeah. And again, you're looking for, if Pickens has 1,110 this year, it's going to come in very different ways than the way that, I'm trying to think, Christian Kirk would have 1,100 yards or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to have 200-yard games on his schedule instead of, having 65 yards every single week.
For sure. The ultimate sign, though, is the Cowboys offense did not look overwhelmed against the Eagles. Their ground game actually looked pretty good in terms of potentially setting up play action spots moving forward, because Javonte running that hard, the offensive line blocking up front the way that they did. Teams are going to start respecting the Cowboys ground game. And if that's the case, that vertical X wide receiver is going to get behind a couple times.
Yeah, and if you could trade DK Metcalf for him, I mean, Justin Fields was traded for him in one league. DeAndre Swift traded for him. Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt. Yeah, I do think if you're looking just for a pure flex option, I would much rather have George Pickens than Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt for the rest of the season. So let's talk about some sells at the wide receiver position. We can kind of just rapid fire these. We have Keon, Coleman, Deebo Samuel, and Keenan Allen. And it's always very similar cocktail for us who the sells are every week at wide receiver and at running back. It's usually guys that don't matter a ton in fantasy, like their flex options, their wide receiver 3s and 4s, their RB2s, RB3s, and they're guys that we think you can use to tier up to better options like Nico Collins, like Drake London, like Devonta Smith, like George Pickens, like the guys that we talked about in this video. Keon Coleman, absolutely a riser. No question about it. He's a guy that you should feel better about now than you felt about when you drafted him. But he is going to be, don't get it twisted, probably like Gabe Davis when he was on the Bills. He's going to be boomer bust. He's going to have...
For better or worse.
Yeah, for better or worse, he's going to be like Gabe Davis. He's going to have boomer bust wide receiver 3 type of appeal. Shakir entered the game banged up. The Bills dropped back 53 times in this game, which probably won't happen every week because they like to run the football and they won't be playing the Ravens offense down 20 points the entire game.
So one thing, by the way, the funniest stat. So obviously when I pulled up the expected fantasy points for when Drake London, when I talked about them, he was number 2 in expected fantasy points at wide receiver per Mike Clay. I went to the quarterback tab. You know what Josh Allen's expected fantasy points was in this game?
Probably like 50.
44. 44 expected fantasy points. He underperformed by his expectation.
Insane. Yeah. Keon Coleman, the reason for why I'm saying he's going to be just like a wide receiver 3 boom bust type of guy is some of the separation stuff. We've saw Matt Harmon kind of detailed. He's not really the same different player than he was last year. It's just that he won a little bit more on those contested catches. Separation score, 88th among 105 wide receivers in week 1. Route win rate tied for last. Like, again, he plays for the Bills. So we love getting pieces of that offense. We love, if you're going to be a boomer bust wide receiver 3 type, it's better to be it on the Bills offense than the Saints offense. Like if Rashid Shaheed played for the Bills right now, he'd probably be a top 36 fantasy wide receiver most weeks in terms of people's rankings.
Oh yeah, he would absolutely crush. And there's one blurb with Harmon, because like you said, the overall separation metrics weren't there. The one blurb that does give credence to people that are very high on Coleman was in, situational plays, outer structure plays, second reaction type of plays. Keon Coleman's like intuition to find open space was actually really good. So that's going to be something that's going to work towards him, because obviously a guy like Josh Allen is going to have those plays where he's extending the pocket. He's buying an extra 4 or 5 seconds, which will help a guy who can't instantly separate like Coleman. But not every week are we going to get an 81-point game environment.
No. And if you can sell Keon Coleman for Mike Evans right now, which is a trade that's happening on the market, Keon Coleman and Odunze were sold for Terry McLaurin and Drake London, just buying low on guys who were kind of weaker in the box score. Keon Coleman and Justin Fields got sold from Malik Neighbors and Travis Etienne. Again, that's probably a casual league where people don't know what they're doing. But regardless, like Deebo Samuel is another guy that we could talk about. I think it's pretty straightforward. He had a great game, came in a game where Terry McLaurin didn't have a great game. And I will say, very similar to Keon Coleman, I feel better about Deebo Samuel than I did as I actually drafted both of these guys in our listener league. So I feel better about him now, but I don't think he's going to be an every week wide receiver 2.
Well, exactly. I mean, the only sample size we have of him right now is him scoring 22.9 points. There's overall market hype on the Commanders offense. Obviously, what Daniels did in year one, Cliff Kingsbury getting a lot of positive buzz. People like the Commanders offense, and people know who Deebo Samuel is. So when people have all those connecting together with a 22.9 point week, a wide receiver 6 overall week, and have known in the past that Deebo Samuel, like I said, that 2021 year with the 49ers, he was the wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 in fantasy. Because that exists, I think a lot of your league mates are going to be higher on Deebo comparatively, because it's not like a mystery box. It's not like, oh, well, Quentin Johnson, we haven't seen him be dominant in fantasy before. They'll look at Deebo, they'll be like, well, he was a wide receiver 1 before. He produced in week 1. Why can't he be a wide receiver 1 again? And if that's kind of how your league dynamic works, my question is, I mean, we talked about it before, but can you throw a Deebo Samuel plus package and go get Nico Collins right now?
Yeah, well, you can see right here, Deebo Samuel plus RJ Harvey acquired Drake London on the open market. Deebo Samuel straight for Emeka Egbuka, who I'd much rather have. Deebo Samuel plus Jaden Higgins to get a quarterback advantage like Jalen Hurts. There's opportunities to be had there where if you do have 2 of these guys that had good weeks in week 1, you take a Deebo Samuel plus a J.K. Dobbins, you take a Deebo Samuel plus somebody who had a good spike week performance like Michael Pittman or something, and see if you can upgrade your starting lineup, because I think the vast majority of you guys listening to this probably play in like start 8 or less type of leagues, 12, 10, and 8-man formats. So your starting lineup realistically is the only thing that matters, unless you're one of those sickos out there that plays in like a start 13 league.
Yeah, which I don't even want to have the mental capacity to play in a league like that. Start 13, my brain would malfunction.
Yeah, and if you're a sicko like that, you should probably be making content, not listening to it. So Keenan Allen is the other sell high that we have here. I think we all can say comfortably we feel better about the Chargers passing attack as a whole, whether it's McConkey, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, obviously a huge waiver pickup for a lot of people this week. And that's going to spill over into everybody. It's going to factor into Keenan Allen's floor on a weekly basis. It's going to factor into Ladd McConkey's ceiling and Quentin Johnston's spike week appeal on a weekly basis. But he's a sell for the same reason Deebo's a sell. It's that people know Keenan Allen. People have seen Keenan Allen for years, probably won championships with Keenan Allen. So them seeing Keenan Allen produce is reaffirming if they drafted him. Like, for example, my commissioner in my home league loves big names, always drafts big names, absolutely loves them. In week 1, he's convinced that Keenan Allen's the better receiver versus Ladd McConkey. Like, he's convinced.
Amir?
Yeah.
Amir actually said that?
But like, that's how he is. If a big name, he drafted Deebo too. Like, if a big name guy produces, he's like, this is the same old Deebo, the same old Keenan Allen that we know.
He must have had a great week 1 then. That's all I'm going to say.
He did have a great week 1. He had Keon Coleman on his bench too. Like, he has literally all 3 of our cells are on his team.
Yeah, dude, he's going to watch this video and be like, FSE just wants me to sell my whole team.
He doesn't like trading. He drafts well every year, and credit to him. He just doesn't like trading. He's scared of losing trades, so he'll just try and draft well and pick up waiver guys.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. Regardless, though, I mean, Keenan Allen, like you said, very well known in the public eye. There are going to be people that are going to be like, yeah, he's better than Ladd McConkey. Or at the very minimum, people are going to be like, well, given the previous connection with Justin Herbert, given that he's back here now, like maybe he doesn't out-target Ladd McConkey, but it's a 1A, 1B situation. I could see people really rationalizing that to themselves, considering the fact that he actually out-targeted Ladd in week 1. However, as we know, Ladd McConkey, far superior player at this point in his career. Ladd McConkey, a couple plays that was left on the field as well. And I like Keenan Allen, top 40, top 45 guy for the rest of the season, in my opinion. Corey, I mean, you could speak volumes to this. Like, he was the most underpriced player in best ball.
Yeah, you did love you some Keenan Allen. So credit to you there if you got some best ball bags, which I'm sure you did. You want to wonder what your league mates think of Keenan Allen. Do your league mates think he's an every week wide receiver 2 or 3? Because if they do, then you should probably shop him. Because what he is a wide receiver 4, most likely. Given that this stage of his career, if you drafted Keenan Allen, this was always going to be the best time of year for him before he starts getting banged up and nicked up and missing practice with injuries and that kind of thing. He's always going to be better weeks 1 to 4 than he is weeks 15 through 17.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's going to happen with the majority of older players. Funny enough, the only outlier last year was Derrick Henry when I did this.
I mean, Derrick Henry's a freaking unicorn.
He's an outlier to begin with, but usually with these types of players, even like we've seen Kamara kind of be victim to that these last couple of years, where they're going to start fast and then come week 9, come week 10, you're going to be like, why didn't I sell them when they're at the peak of their powers? And Keenan Allen screams like that player, especially knowing how many of these, highly valued, highly drafted players kind of underperformed in week 1.
Yeah, and maybe you wait a week because he plays the Raiders this week, and he'll probably have another good performance. And same goes for Deebo and Keon Coleman too, because like the more data points that people have, of the guy
The more
producing, well,
reaffirmed.
especially if your league is casual and they'll just look at box scores. If Keenan Allen has another 7 for 110 in this game, he might people might really think he's a wide receiver 2 rest of the season.
Like nerds like us will watch the Monday night game, be like, let's fucking go. Roma Dunze, he had 9 targets in this game. We take that. That's so good projecting forward. And other people will just see, like a 2-catch, 93-yard, 2-touchdown performance, be like, that boy, nice.
Yeah, no, exactly. So these are the shops. These are the buys. Go and make some trades for some wide receivers in your league. The worst, like literally the stone worst thing that you guys can do is nothing, honestly. Like even if you don't make a trade, you don't have to make a million trades a year to be a productive fantasy manager. Just do your due diligence like Danny just made reference to. If you have a guy on your team that your league mates probably think higher of than you do, then you should probably go sell him. If you're looking down at your roster and you're like, I don't really like Michael Pittman this year, but he had a monster game in week 1. Well, then you should probably take Michael Pittman plus DK Metcalf or whoever your wide receiver 2 or 3 is and see if you can go buy low on Drake London. See if you can go buy low on Nico Collins. See if you can go buy low on guys like Devonta Smith. And like we could have talked about more guys, Tetairoa Mcmillan, as we talked about too. So definitely don't be afraid to make moves. Don't be afraid of losing trades as long as you feel comfortable and confident in the kind of like rationale. Like, hey, I'm buying a mid wide receiver 1, low end wide receiver 1 projection with a wide receiver 2 and a wide receiver 4 who had a good week. That's how you sleep easy at night. It's like, okay, if I lose this trade because for whatever reason I misappropriated those values, I can live with that knowing I'm getting the best player in the deal.
Get aggressive. At the end of the day, 2nd through 12th matters the same to me. It's all about getting first place. Now, obviously, you might have leagues, pay 2nd and 3rd. None of that, bro. We want to win our championship. You know how we win our championship, Corey? We make our team better at any type of scenario. We make our team better any chance that we can. Even if it's week 1, even if people are like, you don't want to trade after week 1. You drafted these players for a reason. Well, guess what? I would argue the information that we have with week 1 in conjunction with the offseason is the most informed we've been all offseason.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if your league mates are going to just only care about what happened in week 1 and not care much about what they thought of the players in the offseason. So again, if you want to use our trade calculator, trade finder tool, those are both free tools you can use over on flockfantasy.com. If you guys want to sign up for a subscription, obviously you can get access to our specific opinions over on flockfantasy.com. You can get, you can put our rankings into the trade calculator. You can put our rankings into your My Teams page and kind of determine your strengths and weaknesses on your roster. And of course, our rest of season rankings are up to date. Our weekly rankings for week 2 are ready to go. So if you guys are looking for start sit help, they can help, or we can help you with that there. So check that out. That'll be linked down below in the pinned comment. But with that being said, peace out and we'll talk to you soon.